intelligence algorithm. The offenses that were listed sound almost cartoonish to the Western ear. They ranged from having a long beard to having WhatsApp on their phone, or using the front door more often than the back door, or reciting the Quran during a funeral. But there was nothing cartoonish about what happened to those people once they had been arrested by the Chinese authorities. That vast roundup was the first known instance of a computer-generated mass incarceration, and its victims were almost all Uyghurs, the Turkic Muslim population whose Central Asian homeland, Xinjiang, or as we call it, East Turkestan, was handed over to Mao Zedong by Stalin in 1949, after a very brief period of independence. Labeling almost all Uyghurs as potential religious extremists and a threat to the Communist Party's authority, the People's Republic of China has rounded up as many as 3 million of them, as well as other Muslim ethnic groups, into what it euphemistically calls re-education camps. These arrests are extrajudicial, based on an individual's race, ethnicity, and religion, the same criteria used by Nazi Germany to round up Jews and Roma. On paper, the reason given for the arrests was de-extremification. Since 9/11, China has used the Uyghurs' Muslim faith as an excuse to portray the population of 11 million as potential al-Qaeda terrorists, all of them, men, women, and children. But the real reason is this. Beijing does not consider the Uyghurs to be Chinese enough. The authorities perceive their centuries-old ethno-national identity, religion, and cultural heritage as disloyalty to the party and a source of future political threat to the state. Uyghurs have their own language, literature, and history, formed over thousands of years at the point where Buddhist, Manichaeism, and Muslim identities have historically overlapped. The Communist Party, under General Secretary Xi Jinping, has tried to label anyone who tries to oppose China's crackdown as separatists or terrorists, designations punishable by life imprisonment or the death penalty, just as they did with pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong and peaceful Buddhist monks in Tibet. China's main interest in Xinjiang is, however, the land. Located on the fringes of Central Asia's vast steppes, the region, the largest in China, roughly the size of Alaska, contains huge tracts of natural resources and minerals, petroleum, natural gas, coal, gold, copper, lead, zinc, and long stretches of fertile agricultural land. In fact, Xinjiang produces about 20% of the world's cotton supplies. To keep this supply chain going, China has assigned work placements, essentially forced labor, for Uyghurs to toil in these cotton fields, as well as in local factories that get contracts to manufacture goods in the West. Top brands such as Adidas, H&M, and Uniqlo have been identified as having used cotton from Xinjiang, and the U.S. has recently announced human rights-linked sanctions against 11 Chinese companies that have supplied material or parts to Apple, Ralph Lauren, Google, HP, Tommy Hilfiger, Hugo Boss, and Muji. For the first time since the heyday of the antebellum South, cotton slavery is once again polluting the global economy on an industrial scale. Here we are in the third decade of the 20th century, witnessing a population's genocide on a massive scale. The tactics used to implement this genocide are reminiscent of Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution, but on digital steroids. Since Mao's day, Beijing has updated its technique with an arsenal of the latest technology, much of it stolen from Silicon Valley and adapted to its own malignant purposes. The decades-long struggle over its occupation of Tibet, a cause that is largely lost in the eyes of human rights groups, helped the Chinese refine their tactics for suppressing an entire people. It became efficient at eradicating culture and independence while evoking very little protest from the world. There is every sign that China is doing all this not just to brush aside the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Hong Kongers, but to perfect the art of digital dictatorship, a new kind of AI totalitarian state. Already, many of the spying practices used en masse against the Uyghurs are commonplace in spying on the 1.4 billion citizens of China. Their social credit system monitors